A manager can help you in a variety of ways. They can hand you a foreign object, they can distract the refs so you can use that foreign object or other nefarious actions, they can distract your opponent so you can get the upper hand on them, or they can cut a promo when your character is either supposed to not speak at all or if you don't quite have the mic skills. These are my top 10 favorite managers of all time. Notice I said favorite, like in my first video with my favorite superstars. I'm not saying these are the best. These are just the guys and gals that I enjoy watching the most when they're doing their thing.
Number 10, Francine.
The Queen of Extreme was originally introduced to ECW fans as a super fan of Stevie Richards, eventually going on to manage Stevie, but members of his group, notably Beulah McGillicuddy, didn't get along with Francine, and eventually Stevie turned on her. Then Francine went on to manage the Pit Bulls, eventually turning on them to become the head cheerleader for Shane Douglas, which is, in my opinion, where she garnered her greatest success, gathering much heat for her and Shane from the ECW faithful. The fans there just showered her with various chants, very inappropriate, and she egged them on all the way. She eventually went on to WWE's version of ECW, but wasn't used properly. She wasn't a diva. I personally would have liked to seen her go into the general manager role that they gave to Tiffany, aka Taryn Terrell. I just think she would have done well in that job, and the ECW fans would have eaten it up.
Number 9, Gary Hart.
Gary Hart started out as the head booker down in World Class Championship Wrestling. He was the mind behind the great Von Erich Freebirds feud, so you know he had a head for the business. And when he got in front of the camera as a manager, starting with New Age Management with Abdullah the Butcher and J-Tex Corporation featuring Terry Funk, Buzz Sawyer, and others, he was just a great manager. What I liked about Gary is he came off as truly diabolical. It didn't seem like an act. It didn't come off as I'm a bad guy because I have to get heat or I have to do these bad things for my guys to win. He truly enjoyed being bad. He came off that way, and I really enjoyed watching him.
Number 8, Missy Hyatt.
Missy Hyatt started down World Class Championship Wrestling managing John Tatum. It wasn't until she moved to UWF that I got to see her when she started managing Eddie Gilbert and his Hot Stuff International group, turning it into H&H International, managing Eddie and his brother Doug and others. Then she went on to ECW, managing the Sandman for a short time. She still is in the business, managing the girls over on WSU, Lacey Von Erich being one of the many. What I really liked about Missy is she played the blonde bimbo very well. And I mean played. She played the refs. She played her opponents. They thought she didn't know what she was doing until snap, Eddie was on top of them getting the win, or she was interfering, helping him get the win. And her opponents looked totally dumbfounded that they fell for it. She was just brilliant in that way.
Number 7, Bobby Heenan.
Bobby Heenan started right here in Indianapolis. He went on to the AWA to manage Ray the Crippler Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel, and then he went on to the WWE, where he garnered most of his fame managing the infamous Heenan family, with the likes of Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Rick Rude, who he managed to an Intercontinental title reign, and the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, who he managed to the tag team titles. He went on to have a great commentary career alongside Gorilla Monsoon. His spot in the Hall of Fame is well deserved, and I loved watching him manage Loved him just egging the crowd on to get him to call him the Weasel, having those great Weasel matches where he had to put on the Weasel suit. He truly was the brain of professional wrestling.
Number 6, Jim Cornette.
I'm not talking about Jim Cornette of the modern era, who seems to have some sour grapes about the evolution of the business and his unwillingness to evolve with it. I'm talking about Jim Cornette back in the glory days, when he was managing the Midnight Express and Big Bubba Rogers in the NWA, when he came to the WWE and managed Yokozuna and the British Bulldog and Owen Hart and those guys. I'm talking about when he founded Smoky Mountain Wrestling and ran that for several years. He has a great mind for the business as it was, and during that time, he was genius. I thoroughly love watching his promos, his ability to take a bump whenever necessary and just overact and have the crowd eat it up because you wanted to see Jim get his ass kicked. I just love that about that man during that time. He was a great manager during the 80s and early 90s.
Number 5, Jimmy Hart.
Jimmy Hart got his start down in Memphis at the behest of Jerry the King Lawler. Jimmy was a session musician that had worked on Jerry's album. Jerry saw something in Jimmy, and when Jimmy got in front of the TV cameras, we all saw it. There's a reason they call him the mouth of the South. No one cuts a promo quite like Jimmy Hart. No one riles up the fans ringside just by the sheer voice amplified through that megaphone quite like Jimmy Hart. He managed a plethora of great talent in the WWE, the Hart Foundation, Greg the Hammer Valentine. He managed the Honky Tonk Man to a great intercontinental reign. When he went over to WCW with Hulk Hogan, they tried to turn him face. He was passable, but he's so much better as a heel, and eventually they made that heel turn, and he had a great career down there too. He is an amazing guy, and also a songwriter. Some people might not know he wrote the theme song for my favorite wrestler, Shawn Michaels, Sexy Boy. He also wrote that somewhat ridiculous Sting theme back in the 80s. You know, he's a man called Sting. Yeah, that was written by Jimmy Hart. Songwriter, great manager, and all around just an entertaining guy.
Number 4, Sherri Martel.
Sherri Martel was not just an amazing manager, she was a great wrestler as well. That probably helped her as she led the Playboy Buddy Rose and Pretty Boy Doug Summers to the AWA tag titles. When she came to the WWE, she managed such greats as Ted DiBiase, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Shawn Michaels. In fact, singing the first version of Shawn's theme song, Sexy Boy. When she went to the WCW, she managed Ric Flair and then went on as Sister Sherri to take Harlem Heat to their many tag titles. She was able, unlike many female managers, to get fully involved, to actually be a physical threat inside the ring, on the outside, and she could cut an amazing promo with that incredibly shrill, shrieky voice of hers. It was just great heel promos cut by an amazing woman.
Number 3, Paul Ellering.
Paul Ellering is really known for managing one team, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. He wasn't just their manager on screen, he was literally their business manager. He handled all their booking, he handled their finances, he was the true business manager. He'd been with them so long, in fact, when WWE asked him to turn on them and side with the DOA in a storyline, he said he found it difficult to cut promos on Hawk and Animal because he'd been with the boys for so long he didn't want to say anything bad about them. He could cut a great promo because he had such an amazing mind. not just for the business, but an amazing mind in general. There's so many guys that'll talk about him and say he was always the smartest guy in the room.
Number 2, Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman can evolve and adapt like no one else in this business. From the psycho yuppie Paulie Dangerously running the Dangerous Alliance in WCW with such greats as Arn Anderson and Steve Austin, to running ECW, fueling the Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars in some respects, bringing all the luchadors in from Mexico that helped fuel WCW in some regards, to coming to WWE and siding with all of his Paul Heyman guys, the CM Punks, and now Brock Lesnar exclusively. I don't like Brock, but I always enjoy a Paul Heyman promo. It's entertaining, even if I don't like the guy he is talking about. Paul will always be a part of this business because he has his finger on the pulse of what makes it great, and he will always change when necessary, but stay true to himself no matter what.
Number 1, Pallbearer.
As Percival Pringle III, Bill Moody had had a great career everywhere he went, but it wasn't until he moved to the WWE and used his real-life background as a mortician to create the Pallbearer character did he become truly legendary. His promos are the stuff nightmares are made of. The high, shrill voice, teaming with dark characters like The Undertaker and Kane and Mankind, somehow making those guys even darker. He will truly be missed by all, and his spot in the Hall of Fame was well deserved. Well, there were my top 10 favorite managers of all time. Tell me who your favorite is in the comments below, and give me any thoughts on upcoming top 10s you would like to see. Now it's time to jump into the mailbag and answer one of your guys' questions for this week.
Michael Pereira writes, what Hall of Famer from before 2000 would you enjoy being alone in an elevator with?
This was a really small field to choose from. There were only 4 classes before 2000. The first class consisting of one person, Andre the Giant, of course. And a lot of those guys and gals, I really don't know their work. I know them by reputation only. There are a few of them I'd really want to talk to, but if I have to choose one person, it's Pat Patterson. He had an amazing wrestling career, an incredible feud with Sergeant Slaughter, culminating in that amazing boot camp match at Madison Square Garden. And he was behind the scenes at some of the most pivotal times in the industry. He's the creator of the Royal Rumble. He had an integral part in signing the match between Shawn and Bret at WrestleMania 12, the Iron Man match. He's genuinely a fan, and I love talking to other wrestling fans. Also, as a member of the LGBT community, I'd really like to pick his brain about how it was being a gay man coming up through the business during the 70s and 80s and 90s. I'd really like to see what he'd have to say about storylines and moments we look back on now and see them as homophobic, like how Goldust, how his opponents viewed him in the early days, how Ahmed Johnson and Razor Ramon treated him, and how other moments and storylines can be seen as transphobic. I'm looking at you, Mark Henry and Sammy. So, if I had to be stuck in an elevator with one man from those first few years of the Hall of Fame, it's the first Intercontinental Champion of all time, Pat Patterson. And if you've got a question you'd like me to answer on an upcoming show, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Family One Kickout. You can follow me on Twitter at Festus74. And tune in next week when you get a doubleheader, when I'll be giving previews and predictions of NXT TakeOver Dallas and WrestleMania 32. Thanks for watching, And until next week, when life has you pinned, always kick out.